The morning sunlight streamed gently through the tall windows of the city's most elegant cafe, painting the polished wooden tables in warm golden hues. The air was filled with the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of coffee cups, and the faint aroma of freshly baked pastries. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, where people came not just to eat, but to savor the moment, whether it was business people discussing deals, friends laughing over coffee, or couples enjoying a quiet breakfast. The cafe had a calm, inviting atmosphere that made everyone feel at home. Among the regular patrons and newcomers, one figure walked in that morning who immediately caught attention. A woman, clearly wealthy and confident, stepped through the glass doors. Her outfit was elegant yet understated, with a tailored coat, delicate jewelry, and shoes that suggested quiet luxury rather than flashy display. There was something about her posture, the calm way she held herself, and the serene expression on her face that made people glance her way. Some whispered to each other, recognizing her as one of the city's most successful and influential businesswomen, while others simply stared, captivated by her presence. She didn't seem to notice the subtle glances or the curiosity in the room. Instead, she moved with purpose toward a small table by the window, where sunlight fell softly on the polished surface. The table was her usual spot, a place she often chose to sit alone, away from the noise, where she could think, plan her day, or simply enjoy a quiet cup of coffee. She settled into the chair, crossing her legs elegantly, and pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails and messages with practiced efficiency. Her expression was calm, almost neutral, but there was a hint of something deeper behind her eyes, a sense of introspection, as if she carried thoughts and memories that were private and profound. Around her, the cafe continued its rhythm, yet somehow the world seemed to pause for her presence. The soft background music, a gentle piano tune, mingled with the hum of conversation and the occasional laughter from nearby tables, creating a serene, almost cinematic backdrop. The sunlight reflected off her hair, giving it a soft glow, and her eyes, hidden for a moment behind stylish sunglasses, suggested intelligence, experience, and a life full of stories. She wasn't just another wealthy woman in the cafe. She had an aura of mystery, of someone who had seen much, accomplished much, and yet remained quietly reflective. As she waited for her order, she glanced around the cafe, observing the staff with a polite but discerning eye, the young barista taking orders, the experienced waiters balancing trays, and the quiet corners where regulars sat reading newspapers or typing on laptops. Everything seemed ordinary at first glance, yet she noticed details that others might miss: the slight tilt of a chair, the way sunlight fell on a particular table, the pattern of movement among the waitstaff. Her attention to detail, trained by years of experience and responsibility, was almost instinctive. Yet that morning, her focus would soon shift to something far more personal and unexpected, something that would make her forget her usual composure. The aroma of fresh coffee reached her, and she took a deep breath, savoring the familiar comfort. Her hands rested lightly on the table, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to relax, letting the gentle ambience of the cafe envelop her. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual energy: honking cars, people walking briskly, the distant sirens. But inside, it was peaceful, intimate, almost sacred. The contrast between the bustling city and the calm of the cafe mirrored the woman's own life. A life of high-stakes decisions and fast-paced environments balanced by rare moments of quiet reflection. Little did she know that this ordinary morning, in this seemingly ordinary cafe, would become extraordinary, that her attention, so often focused on business, achievements, and responsibilities, was about to be captured by something simple yet deeply meaningful, something that would stop her in her tracks, make her heart race, and awaken emotions she hadn't felt in years. It was a moment that would remind her of humanity, connection, and the profound impact of noticing the small but significant details around her. The stage was perfectly set for a story that would touch not only her life but the life of someone else in the cafe as well, and it all began with her quiet, thoughtful presence in that serene, sunlit space. The morning continued as usual at the cafe, yet for the billionaire woman, nothing would remain ordinary for long. The gentle sounds, the warm light, and the simple act of sitting at her favorite table would become part of a memory she would never forget. A story of surprise, emotion, and human connection was about to unfold, right here, in this quiet corner of the city, where wealth, humility, and humanity would unexpectedly meet. The young waitress moved through the cafe with a quiet grace, carrying trays filled with steaming cups of coffee and plates of freshly baked pastries. Each step was careful yet natural, a balance of efficiency and poise. She had worked at this cafe for years, but every day she approached her work as if it were a small act of art, a chance to bring a little warmth to someone's morning. Her uniform was neat and simple, a crisp white shirt tucked into a black apron, but it was the small details that drew attention. A soft smile, a gentle nod, the way her eyes lit up when she greeted someone. Around her neck hung a delicate pendant, catching the light with every movement. It was small but striking, a simple gold charm in the shape of a circle, etched with fine lines that told a story far more important than its outward appearance suggested. The pendant had been in her family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter. Each line on the pendant represented resilience, love, and the struggles of the women who had worn it before her. It was more than jewelry. It was a symbol, a reminder of strength and hope, and she wore it with quiet pride, though most people only noticed it as a beautiful accessory. She approached the tables with a warmth that made even the busiest patrons pause, greeting each person with a cheerful yet genuine, "Good morning," or "How are you today?" There was no rush in her movements, even when the cafe became crowded, and no task seemed too small for her attention. She had a way of making each customer feel seen, not just served, a skill that came from years of listening, observing, and caring about people. Her co-workers often marveled at her ability to stay calm and cheerful even during the morning rush, as if she carried an inner light that no amount of chaos could dim. Her life outside the cafe was not as easy as her smile suggested. She had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, and she had learned early the value of hard work, determination, and kindness. Every day, as she walked into the cafe, she carried not just the trays and orders but the weight of her dreams and the hopes of her family. The pendant around her neck reminded her of those dreams, of her mother's words. "No matter where life takes you, remember where you come from. And carry love with you." It had become a talisman, something she touched occasionally with her fingers when she needed courage or a quiet reminder of home. That morning, as she moved from table to table, she noticed a new presence in the cafe, a woman sitting alone by the window, radiating calm and quiet confidence. She had seen wealthy patrons before, people who seemed untouchable, living in a world far removed from her own. But something about this woman felt different. There was no arrogance or haughtiness, only a stillness and focus that drew attention without trying. The waitress felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that this moment was going to be unusual, even though she didn't yet understand why. She carried the tray toward the table, her heart steady but her senses alert. Her eyes caught the sunlight reflecting off the polished wood, the soft hum of conversation, and the faint notes of piano music that floated through the cafe. Yet in that moment, everything seemed to fade except for the woman sitting at the window, and the way her eyes instinctively flicked toward the pendant resting against her chest. The waitress had no idea that the small charm she wore, ordinary to so many, would be the key to an encounter that neither of them would ever forget. With a gentle, "Here's your coffee, ma'am," she placed the cup on the table, her fingers brushing slightly against the woman's hand in a fleeting, polite gesture. It was an ordinary act, part of her daily routine, but the significance of that moment would soon become extraordinary. The pendant, the sunlight, the quiet of the cafe, and the presence of two people from completely different worlds were about to converge in a way that would change both of their mornings, and perhaps their lives forever. Even as she stepped back, ready to continue her work, there was a sense of anticipation in the air, subtle but undeniable. Something unspoken hung between them, a connection formed not by words, but by recognition, empathy, and the quiet power of noticing. In that simple, sunlit cafe, amid the aroma of coffee and the gentle clatter of dishes, the stage was being set for a moment that neither the waitress nor the woman at the window could have anticipated, yet both would carry the memory of it long after the day was over, a story of human connection, emotion, and the unexpected ways life sometimes brings people together. As the waitress stepped back, ready to attend to the next table, something in the air shifted. The billionaire woman, who had been quietly observing, suddenly froze. Her hand hovered over the cup of coffee in front of her, as if time itself had slowed down. Her eyes were locked on the delicate pendant resting against the young waitress's chest, and an unexpected wave of emotion swept through her. It wasn't just curiosity or admiration, it was recognition, pure and sudden, as if the universe had placed this moment perfectly in her path. The pendant, simple yet extraordinary, glimmered in the morning sunlight, and in that instant, it unlocked a memory the billionaire had tucked away long ago, a memory from a time she rarely spoke of, a chapter of her life filled with innocence, hope, and loss. The charm's subtle design, its curves and lines, seemed eerily familiar, strikingly so. Her breath caught in her throat, and a lump formed in her throat as emotions she hadn't felt in years began to rise. She blinked rapidly, trying to steady herself, but the memory was too vivid, too real, and it demanded attention. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of the past, faces, voices, laughter, and tears blended into a rush of recollection. She remembered someone, a loved one, a mentor, or perhaps a friend lost too soon, who had worn a similar pendant, a symbol of resilience and courage. The details came back vividly, like a photograph in motion, and suddenly, it wasn't just a piece of jewelry before her. It was a bridge connecting her to a past she had nearly forgotten. The waitress, unaware of the storm brewing in the woman's heart, continued her work with practiced grace, smiling politely at another table, her hands steady, her movements smooth, but the woman couldn't take her eyes off the pendant, couldn't look away. Each flicker of light on the charm seemed to speak directly to her soul, whispering memories, urging her to pause, to feel, to reconnect with something she had buried beneath years of responsibility, success, and solitude. For a moment, the cafe seemed to disappear, the gentle hum of conversation fading into the background, the sunlight through the windows, the aroma of coffee, even the clatter of dishes, all vanished in the intensity of the moment. All that remained was the pendant, the waitress, and the flood of emotions rushing through the billionaire woman. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached toward the pendant, though she did not touch it. She just stared, letting the memories wash over her, tears threatening to spill over. Around her, other patrons noticed the sudden stillness, the way she had paused mid-motion, her gaze fixed and intense, but none could understand what had happened, for this was not a mere glance or admiration for beauty. This was recognition, something deeply personal and profoundly emotional, a moment so rare and precise that it could not have been planned or anticipated. It was as if the universe had aligned two lives, separated by circumstance and social status, for this one brief, extraordinary connection. The woman's heartbeat quickened, each thump echoing in her chest as memories merged with the present. She remembered the lessons of kindness, perseverance, and empathy taught to her long ago, lessons that had shaped the person she had become. And now, standing here in the quiet sunlight, she realized that this pendant, and the person wearing it, were a reminder of those same values, alive and tangible before her, waiting to be acknowledged. A tear slipped down her cheek, hot and undeniable, and for the first time that morning, her carefully constructed composure faltered. She swallowed hard, trying to contain the emotion, but it was useless. This was more than a recognition of an object. It was a recognition of life, of connection, of the fragile, beautiful threads that tie human experiences together. She knew, without a doubt, that this moment would change her day, perhaps even her life, in ways she could not yet fully understand. And so, for a few long, suspended seconds, she simply stared, frozen in awe, caught between the past and the present, between memory and reality, until the truth of the moment settled deep into her heart. It wasn't just about the pendant, nor about wealth, status, or appearances. It was about noticing, feeling, and connecting. A simple act, a small detail, had opened the door to something immeasurably profound. And in that quiet cafe, a story of recognition, emotion, and human connection was just beginning. The billionaire woman sat frozen, her eyes still locked on the delicate pendant, but now it was no longer just recognition that held her, it was understanding, a deep, soul-stirring realization that hit her like a wave. Her carefully constructed world of meetings, deals, and endless responsibilities felt distant, insignificant even, compared to the sudden rush of emotions flooding through her. She felt the weight of memory, the pull of compassion, and the unexpected tenderness of human connection, all in one moment. Her chest tightened as she remembered the people she had loved and lost, the moments of kindness she had received, and the ones she had perhaps overlooked. The pendant seemed to whisper stories of courage, hope, and endurance, and she understood that it was not just an object, but a symbol of something much larger, something that transcended wealth, power, or status. She had spent her life chasing success, But this tiny charm reminded her of life's real treasures: empathy, love, and genuine human connection. Tears began to form, unbidden, pooling in the corners of her eyes. She tried to blink them away, tried to compose herself, but the feelings were too strong, too raw to ignore. Every memory it brought back, every lesson it reminded her of, combined into an overwhelming emotional clarity. She realized that her world, filled with riches and luxury, could never replace the warmth of noticing another person, truly seeing them, appreciating their story, and valuing them for who they were. The young waitress, still moving gracefully among the tables, had no idea the storm she had just sparked. She smiled politely at another customer, her attention gentle yet professional, and yet the billionaire woman saw her in a new light, suddenly aware of the courage, resilience, and dignity the girl carried quietly every day. It wasn't just the pendant that moved her, it was the woman herself, the life she represented, and the connection that had formed in a fraction of a moment. The tears now streamed down her cheeks, glistening in the sunlight, and she felt a strange mixture of joy and sorrow, a profound gratitude for the serendipity of life. She had been reminded of how fleeting and precious these moments are, how easily they can pass unnoticed, and how important it is to pause, to see, and to feel. In that instant, she understood that recognition is not just about memory, it is about empathy, awareness, and the courage to embrace the emotions that come with it. Her hands trembled slightly as she rested them on the table, still staring at the pendant, realizing that this small charm had awakened something she had long buried. The realization was humbling. Wealth, power, and success were not the measures of a meaningful life. Connection, understanding, and heartfelt compassion were. She felt a shift within herself, a softening, as if the walls she had built around her heart over decades were slowly dissolving, leaving space for vulnerability, authenticity, and shared humanity. Around her, the cafe continued its gentle rhythm, but for her, the world had narrowed to one clear focus: the young waitress and the story she carried. It was a moment that demanded attention, reflection, and response, a moment that could not be ignored or forgotten. And as the realization settled in, the billionaire woman felt an overwhelming urge to act, to acknowledge, to express what she now understood so deeply. This wasn't just a fleeting feeling, it was a calling, a recognition that some connections, however brief or unexpected, are meant to be honored and embraced. Her breath came in shallow, uneven bursts as she blinked rapidly to clear her vision, but the tears continued to fall, each one a testament to the depth of feeling stirring inside her, a recognition of joy, empathy, and perhaps even sorrow for the moments she had overlooked in her life. The pendant, the waitress, and this quiet cafe had become a mirror reflecting her own heart, showing her both its strength and its fragility, reminding her that emotional honesty is a gift, and that courage comes not from power, but from the willingness to feel deeply. And in that soft, sunlit moment, the billionaire woman finally understood what she had glimpsed but not yet fully felt before. Life's most profound experiences are not measured by wealth or status, but by the power of noticing, the ability to recognize humanity, and the courage to act on what your heart truly feels. This realization left her breathless, emotional, and yet strangely peaceful, as if she had been awakened to a truth she had long been searching for. The billionaire woman could no longer sit still. Her emotions had become too strong, too urgent to remain contained. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart, but there was no hesitation in her next step. The realization, the flood of memories, the surge of empathy, all of it demanded action. She needed to connect, to acknowledge, to bridge the invisible gap between her world and the young waitress's. She rose from her chair, the sunlight catching the edges of her hair, making it glow like a halo, and moved slowly toward the waitress, each step measured yet filled with purpose. Patrons of the cafe turned their heads, noticing her unusual behavior, a sense of anticipation rippling through the room, but none could see the depth of feeling propelling her forward. The young waitress looked up, sensing the attention, her eyes meeting the billionaire's, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that went far beyond words. When the woman reached the table, she paused for a moment, unsure if she should speak, her throat tight with emotion. The pendant, shimmering softly in the sunlight, seemed to glow even brighter, reflecting the profound significance of this encounter. She leaned in gently, and without a word, she reached out and embraced the waitress, her arms wrapping around the young woman in a gesture of raw, unfiltered emotion. The waitress stiffened for a moment, surprised by the sudden intimacy, but she soon relaxed, feeling the sincerity and warmth emanating from the hug. It was not a polite or formal gesture, nor was it motivated by charity or obligation. This was an embrace born of recognition, empathy, and shared humanity, a silent acknowledgement of life's struggles, resilience, and beauty. The billionaire woman's tears fell freely, dampening the waitress's shoulder, and the young woman, moved beyond words, felt an unfamiliar yet comforting connection. Her own hands rose instinctively, wrapping around the woman in return, grounding the moment in mutual understanding. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, patrons watching quietly as the unlikely pair remained locked in the embrace. The clinking of cups and hum of conversation faded into the background, replaced by a profound sense of presence. A shared story of life, hardship, and resilience flowed between them, unspoken but powerful. The billionaire could feel the heartbeat of the waitress, steady yet strong, and it mirrored her own, connecting them in a rhythm that transcended wealth, status, and social boundaries. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they slowly pulled back, their eyes meeting, each reflecting the other's emotion. Tears still glistened on both faces, and for a moment, neither spoke, allowing the weight of the connection to linger. The waitress touched the pendant lightly, almost instinctively, and the woman smiled through her tears, nodding subtly in acknowledgement. The pendant, once a small piece of jewelry, had become the symbol of a bridge between two worlds, a reminder that empathy and recognition are the most powerful human gifts. Words began to form, haltingly at first. The billionaire spoke softly, her voice trembling with emotion. I just had to tell you, this pendant, it means so much to me." She paused, searching for the right words, and the waitress shook her head slightly, understanding without needing explanation. The moment was not about explanation or backstory. It was about feeling, about connection, about being seen and acknowledged for who they were. The young waitress, inspired by the woman's vulnerability, smiled and replied simply, It's a family piece. It's always reminded me to be strong." Her voice quivered slightly, but there was pride, dignity, and warmth in her tone, and the billionaire nodded, tears still glistening, understanding fully now that this was more than a pendant. It was a story, a lineage, a life carried quietly every day. The embrace had become a turning point, a moment of pure human connection, bridging not just wealth and status, but generations, struggles, and dreams. For both women, the cafe had transformed from a simple place of work and coffee into a sacred space of recognition, vulnerability, and empathy, and as they stood there, hearts still racing, both knew that this encounter, sparked by a simple pendant, would remain with them forever, a reminder of the extraordinary power of noticing, feeling, and connecting. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, the ordinary morning rhythm, the hum of conversation, the clinking of cups, the soft piano music, slowed as everyone's attention shifted to the quiet corner where the billionaire woman and the young waitress had just shared their extraordinary embrace. Patrons whispered softly to each other, eyes wide, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Something unusual, something deeply human, had just unfolded before them, and it was impossible to look away. At a nearby table, a businessman paused mid-sip of his latte, glancing over his newspaper. He frowned slightly at first, thinking perhaps it was just a fleeting, polite gesture, but as he watched, he realized this was far more than that. There was genuine emotion in the billionaire's eyes, and the young waitress's response was equally sincere. A hush seemed to settle over the cafe, as if everyone instinctively recognized the rarity of the moment, the kind of raw, heartfelt human connection that didn't happen every day. A group of college students sitting by the window leaned closer, whispering in awe. "Did you see that?" one of them murmured, eyes sparkling with fascination. "She's crying over a necklace." Another shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips. "No, it's not the necklace. It's the story behind it, the connection between them. You can feel it, can't you?" The first nodded, staring quietly, captivated by the unfolding scene. The students exchanged glances, their own hearts stirred, and a silent, shared understanding passed between them. Some moments were too profound to be ignored. Even the baristas and waitstaff paused mid-step, trays balanced in their hands, eyes wide as they witnessed their coworker being embraced by one of the wealthiest women in the city. It was unusual enough for anyone to show such emotion publicly, but the sincerity, the tenderness, and the vulnerability on both sides made the moment unforgettable. A few quietly wiped tears from their eyes, realizing that this wasn't just a personal interaction, it was a lesson, a reminder that humanity and kindness could transcend social boundaries and expectations. From the back of the cafe, an elderly man with a cane leaned forward, adjusting his glasses to get a better view. His face softened as he watched, and a small, almost imperceptible smile formed. He had lived long enough to know that the world often prioritized wealth, status, and appearances over empathy, yet here it was, an unguarded moment of authenticity and emotion, raw and undeniable, unfolding in front of him. He shook his head slightly, as if marveling at the unpredictability of life. And then returned to his coffee, carrying a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. A young couple at a nearby table exchanged glances, the woman whispering, "It's beautiful, isn't it? How someone can just notice another person like that." Her partner nodded, eyes lingering on the scene, and for a moment, they both felt a quiet hope, a sense that the world wasn't as cold or distant as they sometimes feared, that even among strangers, there could be recognition, empathy, and connection strong enough to bring tears and transform a simple morning into something unforgettable. The billionaire woman and the waitress, still holding hands lightly after the hug, were unaware of the ripple effect they had created, but it was undeniable. Their emotions had filled the room, touching everyone present, like sunlight spilling through a window, warming every corner. Some patrons instinctively reached for their phones, not to gawk or gossip, but to capture a memory of the moment, a story worth sharing. A few would later post it online, the image of empathy and recognition, spreading quietly but powerfully, a reminder of the beauty that still existed in small, everyday interactions. Even the youngest child in the cafe, sitting with a parent and quietly nibbling on a muffin, paused to stare, sensing that something important had just happened, something she could not yet name, but would remember as a feeling, a warmth, a connection, a quiet awe at the kindness of strangers. The room was still, yet it buzzed subtly with an energy unlike anything else that morning, an energy born not of gossip, nor of spectacle, but of witnessing something profoundly human, something unforgettable. And as the moment slowly ended, with the billionaire woman returning to her seat and the waitress resuming her duties, the cafe gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of what had happened lingered in the air, invisible yet palpable, touching the hearts of everyone present. A simple act of recognition, a hug, and a few tears had transformed an ordinary cafe into a space of connection and empathy, leaving everyone silently changed, carrying with them the reminder that human emotion, sincerity, and recognition are powerful beyond measure. After the initial hug, the billionaire woman and the young waitress slowly stepped back, still holding each other's gaze. Both were quiet for a few moments, letting the emotional intensity of the encounter settle around them like a gentle, invisible blanket. The cafe had returned to its usual rhythm, but for these two women, time seemed to have slowed, giving them space to truly notice each other, beyond appearances, wealth, or status. The billionaire woman cleared her throat softly, her voice trembling with emotion. I don't even know where to start," she said, her eyes glistening with tears, yet her smile was warm and sincere. "Seeing that pendant, it brought back so many memories. It reminded me of someone very dear to me, someone I thought I'd lost completely, but in this moment, I feel connected again." The words spilled out gently, each one carrying a depth of feeling that went far beyond mere explanation. The waitress, initially hesitant, smiled softly, a mix of pride and humility in her expression. It's been in my family for generations," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "My mother gave it to me when I started working, and she told me it would remind me to be strong, to keep going no matter what life throws at me. I never imagined it could mean so much to someone else." Her hands instinctively reached to touch the pendant again, a gesture of comfort and connection, as if acknowledging the unspoken bond between them. The billionaire woman nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It's more than just a piece of jewelry. It's a symbol of hope, courage, and love," she said, her voice steadying as she spoke. "And you wear it with such dignity. I've been reminded today that strength isn't about what you have or what you achieve, it's about what you carry in your heart, how you face life, and how you treat others." The waitress listened intently, absorbing every word, her own emotions reflected in the billionaire's sincerity. For a few minutes, they simply stood there, talking softly, sharing stories in hushed tones. Their conversation flowed naturally, bridging years, experiences, and worlds that seemed so different yet were connected by shared humanity. The billionaire spoke of her own past, of moments of loss and love, and the waitress listened with quiet attention, occasionally nodding, occasionally smiling, feeling a profound sense of recognition and understanding. The waitress then shared her story, of growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, of the long hours, the struggles, and the small victories that shaped her. Her words were simple, yet every sentence carried depth and meaning. Her voice was steady, but the subtle tremor revealed the weight of her journey. The billionaire listened carefully, genuinely moved, realizing how much courage it took for this young woman to carry herself with such grace, dignity, and warmth every single day. As the conversation continued, laughter began to mix with tears, moments of levity breaking through the intensity. They spoke of dreams, of aspirations, of the small joys that often go unnoticed in the rush of life. The billionaire woman shared advice, encouragement, and even small insights about facing challenges, not from a position of authority, but from one of empathy and care. The waitress, in turn, offered gratitude, stories of her family, and reflections that revealed resilience and wisdom beyond her years. Through their conversation, a bond formed, quiet yet profound, built not on wealth, status, or fame, but on recognition, vulnerability, and mutual respect. It was a connection born of authenticity, the kind that does not fade with time, that lingers in memory, inspiring, comforting, and reminding both that life's greatest treasures are often found in shared human experiences. As they finally prepared to return to their routines, the billionaire woman reached out again, touching the young waitress's shoulder gently. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for reminding me what really matters." The waitress smiled, touched by the depth of feeling, replying softly, "And thank you, for noticing, for seeing me." The words were simple, yet in their simplicity lay the power of the connection they had forged. Even as the billionaire returned to her seat and the waitress resumed her work, both carried a quiet glow, a sense of fulfillment and warmth. They had shared something rare, a moment of reflection and bonding that transcended social boundaries, reminding them both that true connection is not measured in wealth or status, but in the sincerity of attention, the courage to feel deeply, and the willingness to embrace the humanity in another person. In that sunlit cafe, amid the aroma of coffee and the gentle hum of conversation, a bond had been formed, invisible yet unbreakable, leaving both women forever changed, a quiet testament to the power of empathy, recognition, and heartfelt reflection. The cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm, the hum of conversation, the soft piano music, and the clinking of cups filling the air once more. But for the billionaire woman and the young waitress, nothing would ever feel quite ordinary again. Their encounter, brief yet profound, had created an invisible thread connecting their lives in a way that neither could forget. A moment that began with a simple glance at a pendant had transformed into a powerful reminder of what truly matters in life. The billionaire woman sat back at her table, her heart still racing with emotion. She looked at her hands, trembling slightly, and realized how much this experience had shifted her perspective. For years, she had measured life by success, wealth, and accomplishments, but now she understood that the richest moments are not counted in currency or accolades. They are measured in connection, empathy, and the courage to notice another human being. Across the cafe, the young waitress continued her work, but a new light had settled on her face, something gentle yet radiant. She moved with the same grace and efficiency, yet there was an unmistakable confidence, a quiet pride that came from being seen and acknowledged. Her pendant glimmered softly against her chest, a symbol not just of her family's legacy, but now of a shared human experience that had touched both her life and the billionaire woman's. Patrons who had witnessed the interaction exchanged quiet smiles, some whispering about what they had just seen. It wasn't a spectacle, nor was it showy, it was something far rarer, far more precious, a pure and authentic moment of human connection. The cafe itself seemed to retain a subtle warmth, as if it had absorbed the emotions of the encounter, carrying them in the gentle sunlight, the aroma of coffee, and the soft rhythm of life continuing all around. The billionaire woman reflected on how often she had overlooked these moments in the past, rushing through life, focused on ambition and achievements, but today, she realized that pausing, noticing, and feeling are the things that make life meaningful. She had been reminded that even in a world obsessed with power and success, small gestures, empathy, and recognition can change lives, not just for others, but for oneself as well. The young waitress, too, felt the significance of what had happened. Even after returning to her routine, her heart carried a warmth that would not fade. The embrace, the words, and the shared reflections had left an imprint, reinforcing her sense of worth, her connection to humanity, and the beauty of simple recognition. She understood that life is often a collection of fleeting moments, yet it is in these moments that the most profound lessons are found. As the billionaire woman gathered her things to leave, she paused for a final glance at the waitress. Their eyes met once more, and without words, a silent promise was exchanged, a promise to carry the memory, the lesson, and the connection forward. Both women knew that life would continue, with all its challenges and triumphs, but this encounter would remain a beacon, a reminder of the extraordinary impact one human being can have on another through empathy, awareness, and care. The story of that morning, simple yet profound, was a testament to the power of noticing the small details that make people who they are. The pendant, a tiny piece of jewelry, had been the spark, but the true magic lay in the willingness to feel, to recognize, and to connect. It was a story of wealth meeting humility, power meeting humanity, and strangers meeting in a moment of pure authenticity, leaving both forever changed. Long after the cafe emptied, the sunlight fading through the tall windows, both women carried a quiet transformation within them. The billionaire woman felt lighter, more human, more connected to the world around her, while the young waitress walked with a quiet pride and joy, knowing that her story, her strength, and her kindness had been seen and valued. In the end, it was a reminder that life's greatest treasures are not possessions, achievements, or status, but moments like these, rare, unexpected, and deeply human. And so, the morning that had begun like any other ended with a memory neither woman would ever forget, a story of empathy, recognition, and shared emotion that transcended social boundaries, reminding anyone who might hear it that noticing, caring, and connecting are the true measures of a meaningful life. In the quiet cafe, under the warm sunlight, humanity had quietly triumphed, leaving hearts touched, spirits lifted, and souls forever intertwined.